Hi there. My name is Drew, and if we haven't met before, welcome to ReadyBudgetGo. If this isn't your first visit, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. It's Friday, so it's time for the weekly reel, and this is where I share my real budget numbers, my real triumphs, and my real mistakes. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go! First up on the docket, as it always is the cash dump. This is where I take any of the cash money that I haven't spent for the week and put it toward a stockpile for another goal. So let me close up the binder here and set it aside. I have several different cash pouches. This one here is the coin purse, so any coins that I get back as change for the week go in here. And this week I don't have any because I didn't spend any money this week. So this one can be set aside. This is where I keep all of my cash for the week, and I have in here the same $50 that I had at the start of the week, 20, 40, and 50. So this cash now is going to go into, let me set this aside and this aside, will go into this pouch, and at the end of the month, I will put all of this toward another goal. Now, there are two different things that I'm doing with this money that's left over. One is I am funding the Treasure Island Pirate Collab. So that is a video that comes out every Thursday. That is a collaboration that was put together by Andra at the Traveling and Saving Chief and Lisa at She Persisted Budgeting and Saving. And then there's myself and 18 or 19 other people that are all involved with that collab. So that is getting some of this money. The other portion of this money will be used as kind of a, how do I put this? Like a slush fund in a way for if I go over on my Monday videos where I put cash toward my sinking funds. So if I need a few extra dollars, then I will pull from here. So that is going back into this pouch. And at the end of the month, that moves into yet another pouch so that the next month I start over with a clean pouch. This is where I store all of the coins from week to week. So because I don't have any coins this week, I don't need this one either. And the only other thing left to do is to put in $50 into my spending pouch for next week. So because there are 2 more Fridays in January, including today, this should have $100 in it. And it does, 50 and 50. So I'm going to take $50 for next week, or for this week rather, and this $50 will be for next week. Now, the next week Friday is the 30th, so that means that next week we'll pull several days in from February, and that's just the way it goes sometimes, because I do budget by week, not by month when it comes to cash spending. Okay, so this money now is going to go in here, and that will be ready for if I need to spend any cash this week. Okay, let's get into the budget binder, and I'll tell you all about the numbers that have happened this week. First off, we'll talk about the big move, because I have started to spend money. Let me slide this over here, make sure it's in frame. I have started to spend money toward the big move. I am doing sort of a recon trip, I guess you could call it, out to Ohio in February. At least that's the plan. And so I needed to book travel for that. Now, I have added this travel onto the end of a work trip to Dallas. So that meeting now has gotten pushed out 2 weeks. So I actually need to rebook all of this travel. And I don't know if there's going to be rebooking costs, but it is what it is. I put in a subtotal here this week. And the reason I did that is because what I'm doing right now is for my emergency fund savings, which is my focus, instead of taking money out of my emergency fund and moving it back into my checking account, which takes about a week because there's an intermediary bank in between, I made my emergency fund just hard enough to get at that I wouldn't be tempted to spend out of it willy-nilly. So because of that, it takes about a week. So I'm taking money out of the Big Move account, one of them, but I'm also putting money into my emergency fund, which is at the same financial institution. So what I've been doing, and I'll show this in detail a little bit later, is I've been transferring money from the Big Move into the emergency fund instead of transferring it back and forth and back and forth. So I want to make sure that the amount that I'm taking out of the Big Move account reflects what I'm actually spending. So once this is fully spent, or once this is fully transferred from the big move to the emergency fund, then I will need to start transferring money again um, from my checking account into my Wealthfront account, which is where my emergency fund is. So that'll make more sense later, but this sits at the front because it's a big project and there's going to be a lot of expenses. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of that above all else. All right, so let's move into the January budget. Anything in green is what has happened this week. So as far as income goes, no income came in, which is as expected. I should get paycheck 2 next week. Well, technically the week after. So my next payday is January 30th, which technically is the week after because my weeks start on the Friday. So I probably won't have this filled in by next week. It'll probably be the week after, which is fine. Okay, in terms of bills, the only bill that came out this week was PUD, which is my electric bill, $57 for that. I still have prescriptions to pick up. I will do that tomorrow, so this will fill in next week. And then I should also get my visible bill, or my visible payment will come out next week, and that is for my cell phone. Wallet spending over budget yet again this week, $275.03, so about $25 over. I realized real quick when January started that I wasn't going to be able to keep to the $250. I needed to keep this back at $300. So I did that in the February budget. But for January, we're just having to eat the overages. I am short on some of these bills, so that is helping to counterbalance the overages here. So I shouldn't end up in a bad financial place. There was a significant bill that came in, that unexpected IRS bill, but I already took money out of the emergency fund for that specifically. So hoping for better spending in February. In terms of stockpiles, and this is really savings, these should be swapped. $250 went to the emergency fund. Again, that came out of the big move because I'd already spent money toward the big move. We'll see that in more detail later. And then savings and extra debt, which is really my sinking funds, that was $100 as planned. Okay, cash allocation we don't need to go over. Cash flow, this is basically like a check register. I had another credit card payment this month. This is the same card that I paid last week. I paid it again because the balance is getting high. I don't like having 4-figure balances on my credit cards, so if it ever gets up to that point during the month, I generally pay it down. So I did that again. It's going to go right back up again because there's more travel expenses and some bills that hit and things like that. So it will, there may be another payment on this next week. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Expense tracker. This is all of the money that I spent this week highlighted in green. So you'll see there's no groceries here, and for a couple of reasons. One is I went grocery shopping twice last week, and I wasn't necessarily anticipating doing that, but I also had a big grocery shop. So that got me through the first few days of the week. But then I really was starting to run out of a few things, and instead of doing another midweek grocery shop, I just relied on restaurants and fast food. Not the best idea. Learned a lot this week, which is if I am going to do a midweek grocery shop like I did last week, I really need to plan better for making it last essentially a week and a half rather than, 5 days, 4 or 5 days. Because what ends up happening is when I run out of groceries in the middle of the week, I don't want to do another grocery trip or another grocery delivery because you have to make it worth your while to do it, right? You have to get enough groceries. But I've gotten so into the habit of doing groceries on Friday or Saturday or sometimes Sunday that when I need to do it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I just don't bother. And then the whole budget kind of goes to hell. So that is why I spent $275 this week. One other reason is because there's a big charge here for DoorDash for $54. Yes, that is me. That is just one person. That is for the Cheesecake Factory. And of course, if you've ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory, you know that it's not just one meal. So I got 2.5 meals out of that. But that was to celebrate my pay raise, which I talked about last week, I think. I got about a 10% pay raise. So I did celebrate that. And if I hadn't done that, then I would have been under budget for the week. Still over for last week, but I don't regret spending the extra money to celebrate because I rarely do things like that. But at the same time, I wish I'd been better about the groceries. So that's it for the spending for this week. Oh, and one other thing I'll just mention here. I think I say this every week, but I do record weekly cash as $50 every week, no matter if I spend the $50 or not. Some weeks I spend almost all of it. That's rare, but it happens. And some weeks I don't spend any of it. But no matter how much or how little I spend, I always put it in as $50 because that is how I account for it coming out of my life. In other words, it's out of the bank account. So anything, once it's out of the bank, it's like a bonus if there's money left over, if that makes sense. I don't want to get into the habit of micromanaging cash. So with this extra money, I've got a savings challenge to do, the collab, and I also have my sinking funds to fund. So it's got a place to go. It's not just wallowing or disappearing into the ether. I printed out a second monthly expense tracker, and it looks like I'm going to need it just because there's 5 Fridays in January. Month-end review we don't need to talk about yet. Okay, so let's move over to savings. And let's talk about the emergency fund. So this is the worksheet that I filled out at the start of the year. Well, actually, I did this in December to figure out what my emergency fund needed to be. And I came out with $13,775, and I just rounded that up to $15,000. So I printed out a new beaker to get to $15,000 because I was at 12, so I was about here, and I had to spend all that money and send it to the IRS. So I'm building my way back up and then getting to $15,000. I've been contributing every week in January, but I'm not to the point yet where I can fill in another line. I'm almost there, and let's talk about that. So this week I sent $250 to the emergency fund. That came from the Big Move account because, again, I've already spent out of there. But instead of sending it back to the checking account, I'm just keeping it in Wealthfront and moving it into the emergency fund as needed instead of sending money from checking to the emergency fund. So right now it's at $8,466, and the next line is at $8,520. So next week, I will be able to fill in another line in this tracker, but not quite there yet. In February, my plan is to contribute $650 a week to the emergency fund, so I will need to be turbocharging this, and we should be able to get it, I'm thinking at least halfway in February, and get it back to about where it was before everything kind of went to heck. Okay. Blip Fund is not yet being worked on. That is sort of a catch-all to pick up any expenses that come in that are a surprise, that aren't an emergency. I had this fully funded at one point, and I took all that money to fund my business, so I need to build that back up. So right now that has $100 in it, and it's just sitting there. Now let's talk about the big move. So first up, subscribers. So thank you to everyone who is subscribed. I really do appreciate that. You are not only helping my channel, but you're helping me achieve one of my life goals. So that means a great deal. If you haven't subscribed yet already, I would love it if you would, and I'll save $5 if you do. This tracker, I'm filling in every 10 subscribers, I fill in another bubble, and I save $50. So this week, I was able to fill in 2 bubbles because we went from 820 some odd to 840 some odd. So now up to $100 contribution for the week, $4,200 total. I will pop up a picture of my Wealthfront account so you can see all the balances, and they should match what's going on in my accounts. So I was realizing too, as I was filling this circle in, I was thinking, this is almost done. Like, it's not just the fact of being at 1,000 subscribers, which is kind of an aspirational benchmark for any channel that's just starting out. And I've been on YouTube for about a year at this point, a little more than a year. But it's more, all of these circles represent real people who have, I guess, endorsed their belief in me by hitting the subscribe button. And that's just a fantastic feeling. So thank you to all of you. I greatly appreciate it, more than I can put into words. And I know I say that a lot, but it's true. So I'm going to be sad in a way to finish this sheet, but at the same time, I'm looking forward to it because it is an achievement. So currently $4,200. When this is fully filled in, there will be $5,000 in this account, and that again is going toward the big move. The other big move account, and this is the one that I have been taking money out of, is currently at $5,908, and you'll see that here on the screen in the Wealthfront account. I took $250 this week and sent that over to the emergency fund because that's what I saved. So originally the high watermark was $63.93. My goal for this account was $10,000, but I'm spending out of it. My priorities have shifted, right? So the new priority is fully funding the emergency fund. And I guess that was always the priority. I just have a steeper hill to climb now because I had an emergency where I had to take money out of that account. So this account is unlikely to get any more money put into it between now and when I move. And that's fine. There is another $4,200 sitting in here, and there's an emergency fund I can use. I have also said I'm willing to take on credit card debt if I have to. I will get a 0% card to make this move because it's that important to me. So I've got some bucks in the bank to make the move. If I need more than that, there's places that I can get it. So that is it for the savings tracker. And then, of course, the other goal here is the Sloth IRA for my Roth IRA. Not yet started. It is a goal for the year, but it is not the priority right now. If I think if it gets to the point, and I don't think I will, but it might, if it gets to the point where it's the end of the year or getting toward the end of the year, or we're into 2027, because you can contribute to your Roth IRA for the current year up until the tax filing deadline for the following year. So for example, for 2026, you can contribute to your Roth IRA until the middle of April in 2027. So if it gets to that point and I'm still not fully funded, I will take money from another pot and put it into the Roth IRA. It's that important to me. But at the same time, for now, the emergency fund, because of where we are in the year, the emergency fund is the most important thing. So that is what the savings are looking like and how my spending went for the week. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a thumbs up. Drop a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm on my way to achieving one of my life goals, and if you'd like to be part of that, hitting the subscribe button is the easiest way to do it. Until I see you in the next one, take care.